Welcome to Creekside Chat, brought to you by Diamond Creek Farm. Pull back the barn doors as we delve into the inner workings of a breeding farm. Talking about anything and everything that comes up on the farm. Follow along with us monthly as we continue to strive to be the pet above. Welcome to episode 3 of Creekside Chat, where today we'll talk about the busiest time on any breeding farm, and that's the foaling season. This year at Diamond Creek, we expect 96 foals, and as of this morning, 7 down and 89 to go. Gina Dailey will join us. She's Director of Operations. She began here in 2010 as an intern and has graduated up the ranks. She's seen it all, the good, the bad, and the miraculous in between. She's going to join us here in just a minute and talk about what happens before, during, and after foaling. Gina, take it away.
Welcome to Diamond Creek's foaling barn. I'm going to take you through a typical night on foal watch. Foaling season is around the clock. At Diamond Creek, we break the day up into 3 different shifts: a day shift, a swing shift, and a night shift. These shifts help us to make sure we always have an eye on the mares. They are usually 8 to 10 hours long and overlap so that information can be passed on from shift to shift. All of the shifts have at least one full-time employee and an intern. Our typical day during the season starts at 7 a.m. when the day shift meets with the night crew for any mare foal updates. We turn the mares out, feed the farm, perform vet checks, and reset the barn for the night. Foaling mares usually come in around 5 p.m. when swing shift starts to work. Usually, we bring the mares into the barn at night around 325 days in foals, sometimes earlier if they start showing signs. Swing shift responsibilities include bringing in the mares, making sure the foaling kits are ready for the night, mares are groomed and checked over. What do we need in a foaling kit? After every foaling, we have to restock our foaling kit. These are some of the things that are in there. We've got Vaseline, lube, scissors, and gloves, just in case. We put in 3 towels to dry the foal off. We have a tail wrap. We have umbilical clamps and suture string to help with any problems the foal's umbilicus may have. Every foal gets a half tube of full kickstart. It helps boost their immune system. Every mare gets dewormed, so we also put Quest Plus in there. And then we use enemas to help the foal get started on passing meconium. During swing shift and night shift, mares are checked every 15 minutes. 10 p.m. we turn the barn lights out and we start checking mares with flashlights so they can rest. Diamond Creek does not use cameras. We have enough mares where it makes sense to have a full-time night watch staff. And we think that using cameras, you can miss the more subtle signs, especially on those sneaky mares. When a mare starts to show signs of foaling, such as rubbing her tail, becoming restless, standing in a different position than usual, wax on her teats. Every mare is different. Some will show the signs, and some will show none and surprise you. When a mare breaks water, the night watch will call me and then the foaling manager who lives on property. The first thing we do during the foaling is check the presentation of the foal. Why do we check the position? At Diamond Creek, we think it's really important to check the position of the foal after the mare breaks water. The reason why this is important is because if the foal is in the wrong position and the mare has a dystocia, it's best to fix it earlier than find out when the foal is halfway out. When you do feel something wrong, it's important to call your manager and continue walking the horse. When you start walking the horse, it takes her mind off of her contractions and stops her from pushing so hard to get the foal out, and it makes it a little bit easier for the person correcting it. Let's continue with our foaling process. Once they are positive the foal is in the correct position, we will step out and wait for the mare to start pushing. When the pushing starts, we will step in and assist in getting the foal out. Always pull down and towards the hocks. Once the foal is out, we'll dry it and rub the fluid from their nose to remove excess fluid. We will then hold the umbilicus until it breaks and will keep pressure until the bleeding stops. We disinfect the umbilical with chlorhexidine solution and give the foal an enema. Once we are done assisting the foal and cleaning the stall, we will move the foal right next to the mare's head in a safe position so that the two can relax and bond. When we have a maiden mare foaling, we tend to put a lead rope on their halter to make sure she is not aggressive towards people or the foal. It is in their nature to be protective, and sometimes new mothers are unsure how to deal with a new foal or people working around them. Once the mare stands up, we'll tie her placenta up. Sometimes the amnion breaks off and we have to add a glove full of grain or something that will put a little weight on it so it comes out. A good rule to follow is the 3-2-1 rule. The first hour, the foal should stand. The second hour, the foal should nurse. And the third hour, the mare should pass the placenta. Before the foal gets up and nurses, we will make sure to clean the mare's udder and check the quality of the colostrum. To do it, we use a refractometer. Anything less than good, we typically will tube or bottle feed colostrum from our bank to make sure the foal gets a good colostrum in the first stages of its life.
Looks very good.
Around the 1 hour mark, we will start to assist the foal in standing. Most times the foal is not ready to nurse right away, as it needs time to be able to balance and get its bearings. We usually direct the foal to the udder and teach them to take the first nurses while supporting them if needed. After the foal gets a solid nurse, if the level of colostrum is good, we will milk out the mare and store a bottle of colostrum in our bank. We do this because it is very important to have colostrum stored in case there is a mare with no milk, poor colostrum, or we have an NI-positive mare. If we have an NI-positive mare, we will strip out her colostrum and bottle feed the foal from our colostrum bank. According to the 3-2-1 rule, the mare should drop her placenta within 3 hours. Once the mare drops it, we will examine it and check that it is normal. What we normally check for is the pregnant horn, the non-pregnant horn, which is thinner and most likely to be retained, and that both the allantoic and chorionic look normal. After checking the placenta, we will weigh it. We like to weigh the placenta to compare it to the weight of the foal. After 12 hours, we weigh the foal and the mare and have the vet out for a new foal exam. If the foal is born at night, this will happen the following morning. During the new foal exam, we pull blood to check the IgG. The vet checks for broken ribs, heart murmur, and the eyes. At Diamond Creek, we also run plasmas to help boost the foal's immune system against Clostridium and Rhodococcus. We also use a product called Foal Kickstart to boost the immune system. Foal Kickstart needs to be administered at birth and again 12 hours later. What happens after the foaling exam? At Diamond Creek, we believe that our horses do best outside. When a foal is born, as long as they pass their new foal exam, they're not lax, and they have no medical issues, we try to get them outside. So within the first 24 hours, a foal is turned out. By the time the foal is about a week old, if there's another foal about the same age, we'll turn them out in pairs. They won't start sleeping outside until the weather agrees. Typically, we wait till they're about 2 weeks old and no longer require monitoring. Sometimes, even with all the preparations and care, things don't go as planned. One of the most common issues with foals is neonatal maladjustment syndrome, more commonly known as dummy foal. A dummy foal is a foal that is usually slow to nurse, has difficulty standing up, and don't have a strong suckle reflex. When these signs are evident, the best thing to do is call your vet. They can then run a dummy jug or try the Madigan squeeze. Many cases of dummy foal can be resolved at home with vet intervention, but there are some cases which cannot be treated on farm and will end up in the clinic. Thank you for joining us in the foaling barn. Now it's time to get some rest.
Thanks for joining us in the office, Gina. That was some great information from the farm. I think it really shows all the hard work and really technical know-how that goes into getting all these foals out this time of year.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Nothing ever happens at Diamond Creek without the dedication of the staff and the interns, which Gina was an intern all the way back in 2010 and has climbed up to Director of Operations.
That's a great point, Adam. I think one of the great things that's been established here is the intern program. And look what it's done for people like Gina, who now more or less run the joint. And you know, that being said, we are always looking for good intern prospects, whether you'd like to be on the farm, working with foals or mares, or possibly working with older horses in the yearling division, or maybe you want to work in marketing in the office. It's a great opportunity for people that are in school, you know, even high school, but primarily college or just out of college. You know, so I would encourage anybody to look into our internship program.
Yeah, we started this 15 years ago. Gina was one of the first classes, and then even Caroline, who's behind the camera today. But, you know, we've allowed people to grow within Diamond Creek Farm. It's a great opportunity.
It's fantastic. So on to the next segment here with our little mailbag, because we've got a couple experts here with a ton of foaling experience, decades of foaling experience between the two of you. So I'm going to throw the first question here, and I love it. It's a great introductory question. Do you remember the first mare that you ever foaled out?
Diamond Creek, it was 100 Kisses. I bought her in the fall of 2005, and early February came, and out popped 100 Diamonds, which at the time I figured was going to be the moniker for Diamond Creek. I was going to put diamonds behind it. I ran out of names after one.
let's say a mare has had her foal, but she is not producing milk. We had this question from a breeding client just today, as a matter of fact, and you were able to provide some really good tips to them. Why don't you tell us about that?
So when a mare's not producing milk, we try to encourage her to produce milk. We'll use domperidone twice a day. We'll hot pack and milk out her udder as she allows. Sometimes maidens don't necessarily allow us to do it as much as we'd like to. And we'll give her oxytocin throughout the day. There's no set way of like a set dosage for oxytocin. Every horse is different, and they'll tell you what they'll tolerate and what they don't.
Next question we have here is, can you sense quality in a new foal?
Yes.
I think so, absolutely. We always look at the foals very soon after birth, within 7 days. And I think within 7 days, you can really tell what the yearling's going to end up looking like. But it's always a great first step is to make sure you see them within the first 7 days. And I would say that basically every great foal that we've ever had or great yearling we've ever had was a great foal. I don't know that the opposite is always true. Like a bad foal necessarily isn't a bad yearling, but a great foal is always a great yearling.
Very interesting. Another question for you guys from the public here, and it's something that some people may have not thought of, but do mares naturally care for their foal, or do sometimes they not tend to care about their foal or care for their foals? In other words, they ask, do you ever have bad moms?
I think that much like humans, that mares sometimes don't know what to do or what to expect, and that
it's maidens, right? Like by the time a mare's had multiple foals.
Yeah, it's usually maidens. They're just new moms. They don't know what to expect, what to do. Sometimes they're overprotective, so when you're helping the foal, they get aggressive towards you, and then sometimes it's translated to the foal. But I don't think we've ever had one that doesn't eventually take their foal.
I think we should clarify for any lay people out there, what is a maiden?
Well, we consider them, a mare that is having her first foal.
Yeah, so first-time mommies we refer to as maidens.
Yeah, like teenage moms.
Yeah. I always thought it gets a little confusing, though, because there are maiden races in racing, right, for horses that haven't won their first race. And then we reuse the term, even if they have won their first race, they become a maiden again if they're a filly or mare that's going to be bred for the first time. We use it, or like you said, having their first foal.
Yeah, I think it's probably a misuse of the term, but it applies to what we're using it for everywhere.
So we have another question here. Is for mares that foal over their due date, do those foals have issues? And then the second part would be, what's the longest a mare has ever gone over her due date? And then there's actually a third part, would you ever induce labor on a mare?
You want to start with that?
About inducing? Yeah.
Inducing.
Yeah, I don't know that we would induce. We have on one occasion, years and years ago. It was probably not the right thing to do at the time, but we were at the end of the season. We were into June, and it was a recent mare carrying an embryo, and we were so far delayed from the rest of the group that we were worried that the foal wouldn't have a buddy, and so we ended up inducing the mare. Everything worked out fine, but it isn't the recommendation we would have.
And we'd have the vet involved when we did that. She helped the mare inspect her and made sure that we weren't going to hurt anybody involved.
Yeah, the foal was in the right position and everything was lined up. There was the correct age and everything. It was just time.
Are there any tips you have, say, an owner wants to encourage their mare to foal, like they are overdue?
Don't do it.
Don't. Just let it happen. Let nature take its
course.
course.
The mare's body knows what the foal needs.
Yeah, nature's always the right choice.
At what point would you be alarmed where you would ask the vet to come in and palp, like a number of weeks over a due date?
I don't know that I'd have palp number of weeks, but if the mare was showing signs of distress, I'd probably get a vet involved. But if she's going as normal, I don't see the reason why we would need to.
I mean, we've had mares as long as 380 and 385 before. The foals, ironically, they're a little smaller than what you would expect them to be after growing that long.
Right.
Usually under 100 pounds, usually slightly underdeveloped. Like, there's a reason why they were in there that long. Mm-hmm. But, we've had decent success getting them out, getting them raised up. But, for the most part, they tend to fall within that 330 to 350 range.
Yeah, and that brings up a question about due dates. And if someone was to use 11 months from when they were bred, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's the standard way to figure it out, which works out to about 335 days or so. But we take a different approach. We use historical data for maidens, for older mares, time of the year. Like, we compile a lot of different data sets into one to formulate our due dates.
Do you all notice any other influences as to due dates for mares? Weather patterns, moon cycles, anything else you all picked up on over the years?
I think that I've seen when there's drastic changes in the weather, the mares tend to foal. Like, we had 2 just the other night, and then the next day was freezing. Like, the temperature changed drastically.
Almost like they knew.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an instinct that they're going to have their baby before a bad weather pattern, because in nature, they have to protect their foal anyway.
Sure.
It's an assumption.
Yeah, I think we found clusters of foalings over the years, and you could probably attribute it to nature.
I guess they are herd animals, so the moms would rather foal at similar times. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have foals like 3 or 4 in a row within a 24 or 48 hour period, and then might go 7 days before the next one.
Yeah, like just recently, didn't we have 3 foals in 48 hours where we hadn't had any for a week?
Yeah.
So you all mentioned interns, and the interns are very involved in the foaling process. So I'm assuming there's times at night when you have interns that are big role players in foaling a mare, and it might be their first time doing so, or they don't have much experience. How do you handle their lack of experience and then needing to learn on the job during very crucial moments?
As the years have gone on, I've gotten better at it. I used to just kind of push them out of the way and be like, okay, watch, and you can do the next one. But as time goes on, it's a little bit easier for me to kind of coach from the sidelines, remind people to stay calm, let the mares stay calm. And fortunately, our season's long enough that if I do have to jump in, the next one they actually do get to participate in. As time goes on, we let them do a little bit more important steps. You know, the longer they're here, they'll actually get to go in and check position, or they'll actually get to give the mare her Banamine shot post-foaling. But in the beginning, we just kind of feel it out and see what everybody's skill set is to see what they are able to do.
It's great that you all include them in such an important time so that they can get that confidence and experience that you can only get during a pressure situation.
I mean, we've had, I would say, we were talking about this not long ago, but we've had over 100 interns from the time that we started.
Really?
And I think we've learned over time to do this tiered approach to learning for them. Because I think at the beginning when you started, it was more like, I'm going to kick you right into the deep end. You got to, you better swim or you're going to drown. I mean, we've sent people home within 2 days because they can't do stuff. I mean, people have returned to the circus, and we've had a whole range of interns.
The actual circus.
No, yeah, somebody took care of elephants. They missed elephants so much they returned to the circus.
I wouldn't want to foal an elephant, Mom.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But
I don't even know what you call an elephant.
But, we get these interns in. A lot of them are green, very green. And so our job is to kind of mold them along the way and teach them what they need to know so that when they leave here, if they leave here, that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think there's different kinds of interns. There's some that come in here and they're like, oh, I want to pet a horse. I've never really gotten to do that. And then there are some that are here to learn, the foaling process, what we do and how we do it. It's very easy to determine who's who in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And usually the ones that are just there to pet horses don't last the whole season.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to say that we're not doing this internship program for cheap labor. We actually do pay these people who get to earn like a regular job while they're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal, is to get young people in the door, teach them what they need to know, send them out into the world. Hopefully we keep the best ones.
And it's worth it for Diamond Creek because then you have folks like Gina and Caroline who take on much larger roles.
But even some of the girls that have been here for 3 or 4 years, like they've given us their life for 3 or 4 years, and then they move on, and hopefully they take what they learned here and apply it to their new positions.
And I think it's good too, even when people leave, we hate to see a lot of people go, but when they leave, they're still taking the skills and the stuff they've learned here and able to apply it somewhere else.
Yeah, we'd like to see the graduates of your internship program then go on to do even bigger and better things if possible.
Absolutely. Whether they're vet techs or vet school, I mean, we've had that range. We've had farm managers. We've had, like I said, people return to the circus. We've probably have McDonald's workers and everything in between. So.
All right, I have to ask you all a question that came through the mailbag. It's not an easy question to ask, but I think it's important for people to get a sense for what you all deal with, and that is, how do you deal with losing a foal or a mare dying, whether in the foaling process or just in general in farm life?
I think it's part of the life cycle of what we do. I mean, if you're here at the beginning, like a lot of us are, then you better be there at the end. And I encourage all the people here that when we have to put a horse down or somebody dies, that they have to be there, especially the ones that are there on the ground. I mean, I've encouraged Gina, you know, when we ended up having to put down, she's a great lady, the other day, one of Gina's favorite mares of all time. And it was heartbreaking, but she cared for the mare, loved the mare, and the mare needed her in her last moments. And, you know, you started, not long after you started, we ended up having to put down live entertainment. You know, I encourage, if you're going to be there at the beginning and watch the greatness of birth, then you better be there at the end when it's sad. Mm-hmm. I think it gives perspective as to what we do, and it gives an appreciation for the horses and the lives that we take care of, and it's integral to what we do. But it's sad. I mean, there isn't any other way to cut it. Death is sad.
Gina, early in the episode, you talked about birth position and the presentation of the foal. And you mentioned the word dystocia. Remind us what that is and why that's a problem.
A dystocia is when the foal is not in the proper presentation when it's coming out of the mare. It can be a problem because you can, you know, sometimes the mare will correct on herself and the foal will come out. Sometimes you need human intervention. In the cases where you do need the human intervention, a lot of the times either a foal won't make it or a mare won't make it, and we just have to be there to try to correct it. Standardbreds breed for size, and they're big foals, and not the mare doesn't always match the foal.
Which is where I come in. Luckily, I live close enough that, you know, I can help out if needed, and, you know, having done this for the last 15 years, I've had my arms up the backside of a bunch of mares fixing position. So it is a skill, but it's understanding what the correct position is actually supposed to be, and then moving the foal if you have the ability to do so to get it to that proper position.
Do you have any tips for the viewers on learning about dystocias or correcting them, or tips for how to deal with the dystocia if they don't have the experience that you have at the farm?
You should probably call that. That's my #1 recommendation. And then learn from them, to watch them in action. And if you have enough time, to put your hand in there and feel what it feels like. But you got to learn on normal so that you can identify what abnormal is.
Talk about steps that they should take if they think a foal is presenting incorrectly and they have a dystocia. What would be something they can do?
And this is perfect because Gina deals directly with the young girls that work for us, or even the young guys that work overnight.
So our #1 thing is to get the mare up and moving. If the mare's moving, she's not thinking about pushing as hard. The other thing we'll do is we'll have a person, or usually it's the foaling manager, put on a rectal sleeve and shove that foal back in there. I'll try to talk her through, you know, while they're waiting. Adam's 9 minutes.
1 mile.
1 mile away. So, you know, they're not working too long, but they'll push the foal back in. We'll talk them through, can you move it this way? Can you move it that way? What can you feel? And then when he gets on, I get off the phone and let him take over.
Now, I've been around and seen you all actually need to transport some bad dystocias to a veterinary clinic nearby.
Yeah, I mean, we've done, like I said, we've done this 15 plus years, and we've transported 2. So it's rare, and they're few and far between, but usually it's the one instance was dog sitting, which would be all 4 feet being presented at the same time, which is a no-no, and you better get that horse on a trailer and get it to the clinic. And then very rarely, but like she talked about with big foals and small mares, is you just can't get the foal out because the passageway is just too tight.
That dog sitting presentation, how did that turn out for that mare and foal?
We lost the foal.
Yeah, the foal got cut in half and had to be removed. And then the mare ended up having necrotizing vaginitis, and we ended up having to euthanize her after she foundered.
Awful.
Yeah.
All right, so on a brighter note, we're going to talk about some of your favorite foaling experiences, and if there's anything you guys would like to try in your foaling in the future, or would maybe consider a change, something new or different.
Gina?
Our environment doesn't allow it, but it'd be nice to foal more outside. In my earlier years, we did foal a couple outside due to something. We were foaling on topsoil and peat moss, and we had issues with bacteria. So we foaled the last few outside, and it was easier to clean up. You know, it was really nice. That farm at the time actually had a nice spotlight. It was actually really convenient.
Yeah, I think foaling outside if weather allowed is great. I mean, we sent Caroline to the Southern Hemisphere, and she ended up working at a couple of farms down there. And I think they primarily do it that way with great success. I think foals are hardy when they're born outside. Nature takes over, and it's great.
The ground is softer. They're not slipping on mats. You know, it's a little bit easier, more natural for them to get up and get moving around, I think, too.
Why don't you tell us favorite foal or favorite foal memory?
So my favorite foaling memory, it was the end of the season. I was out to eat with my husband, well, now husband, and one of the interns called me and the mare broke water. So not only did I go, her parents came as well. And it was Great Lady's last foal. And I foaled her barefoot. It's funny because, you know, you go out to eat, you don't think to put boots on. I had flip-flops on, and I kicked them off and pulled it out. And, you know, to top it off, she said, "It's a colt." So I call Adam. He's so excited. You know, we love colts. Trying to make stallions. You know, that's why we're here. And it was a filly. I had to call him back a little bit later and be like,
so we need to do an anatomy lesson with this one.
It's a filly. But that was probably my favorite foaling experience. It was fun. It was different.
And what about you? Do you have any?
Mine was probably any of them where, and I haven't been to that many foalings because I don't do foal watch, obviously. I'm usually there, you know, in the morning. But we had some thoroughbreds boarded at Brookdale Farm, and I remember going out in the snow in, like, you know, middle of the night and just seeing the lights in the barn as you're coming up in a snowstorm. You know, those are kind of cool. I think it was probably Kyle Mega's California Chrome filly that she had.
Yeah, California.
Yeah, and it was like one of the first California Chromes. It was snowstorm, and for me, it was like one of the first mares I had a piece of to foal. It was pretty cool.
It's exciting.
What about you?
For me, I would say probably any dystocia that I get to fix, because that's the most rewarding for me. Like last year, it was Darlin on the beach, and I got the call, and I was busting ass to get to the barn, and you know that's an expensive one. We have partners. And obviously, Darlin on the Beach, one of the great race fillies of the last 10 years or so. But, you know, getting that one moved around, that was a challenging one. Big, sweet Lou filly, but got it out safe and sound. And then this year, anniversary night, got the call, first foal of the year.
No. Tell the full story about the calls, because that's classic.
So I get the call from a 502 number, which is Louisville number, for anybody around here that knows. We're in Lexington. Blocked the number after it had called me 6 times.
What time of night is this?
3 o'clock. We had got home at 11:30.
Yeah,
I'm in bed.
Home very
3 hours, just going to sleep 6 times, and I was like, screw this number. Who is this bothering me in the middle of the night?
So you wake up and you block the number.
I blocked the number, and then about 30 seconds later, Katie Wyman calls, who's the foaling manager, and I was like, oh shit, I fucked up. So I get the...
This was the first foal, though.
First foal of the year, and I was like, all right, good. So I'm stumbling around trying to get dressed in the middle of the night, and Katie's freaking out on the phones. It's number 1, and it's the dystocia, right? So luckily get there. They did everything right before I got there, and it was just a quick turn.
Classic,
and then
it turned out good.
Yeah.
That was a great discussion about foaling. I just want to thank Adam and Gina for sharing all their experience and knowledge with us and the viewers. I want to thank all our viewers. We've been amazed by the support for the show. If you have questions that you want to be on the show, you need to email us. You can do that by emailing Caroline at diamondcreekfarm.com. And we've got another show for you next month. We're going to be in the Pennsylvania breeding shed. We're going to meet the stallions of Pennsylvania at Diamond Creek up close. and we are going to learn about collecting semen from those stallions and processing that semen and shipping it out to you, the breeder client. So stay tuned, and we will see you then.